into this, and we're still booting up. That's awesome, but it's okay. So, for clarity purposes, this will be the copyrights panel. Yeah, no, that's trademark. We're not doing trademarks at this panel. Is this important?
Is the door
So
in the middle of a panel.
is the copyright panel. Garth has a PowerPoint presentation.
There it is.
Alright,
I believe he stole from Disney.
correct. Yes. Let's see. Alright, alright, hey, that works. God damn it. I don't like you at all. I don't like you. Like, you are a terrible, terrible projector.
So, while we're at this is a Toshiba HP Intel processor. So, if you were to call your thing Intel processor, you'd be good.
Thanks.
I'm trying.
I know. Why do you think you're 640 by 480? That's retarded. This too much.
Let go. She wasn't there.
Advanced. Yeah, let's go back to the easy menu.
Oh, you're using these examples.
Yeah. You know the ones I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think it's your keystone at plus 11?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think what it is that it thinks that the computer input is 46 by 480, which is totally not.
Really
My
knew
screen doesn't even get that.
I knew I should have gone to that projector tutorial panel.
Yeah.
Garth was also heading that one too.
Yeah. Shows you what I know, right? Alright, well, we're going to do some panic scan on this one, guys. Alright, so, yeah, I know. Sorry, it's, let's see, can I, how centered can I get this?
What's the resolution
Much, I mean, it's like 1024 by 768.
That's not
Oh no. Well, it's okay. The projector thinks that it's only like 640. I can't. I can't get that small. I can get to 800 by 600. Let's see what we do here. Will this help? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it helps.
A little bit better.
A little better. I can kind of get most of it. Yay! There we go. That's all the important stuff of the thing.
Well, that's all the time we have for this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. All right, so let's get after all that nonsense, let's get this working. All right, so copyrights, everybody's favorite stuff.
Should we introduce ourselves?
Yeah, I suppose we should do that. Shall we start on the far end of the table?
Sure. My name is Elaine Corbidet. I do a comic called Ribbon Soul. I also am a published author and do a lot of my works both with traditional and Creative Commons style copyrights.
My name is Ben Kahn. I do the webcomic Answer Retort. My qualifications are that I've broken pretty much every copyright law in the country. So I can tell you what not to do very well.
I'm Garth Graham. I currently do the webcomic Finders Keepers. Before that I did the webcomic Community. I'm going to say this right now because this is actually kind of important. None of us are lawyers, right?
I'm Jewish.
If I was coming to you for like financial advice, totally good. But I don't think that gets you the lawyer degree. So none of us are lawyers. Nothing said in this panel should be taken as legal advice. If you have serious, questions about copyrights, consult your local copyright lawyer. They will happily help you out and be like seriously legit in what they tell you, as opposed to us who are like knowledgeable but not licensed.
Yeah.
Very important. So now that we got the disclaimer out of the way, we covered our asses, we're going to get right to copyright. So, copyright in the what most people think about when they think about copyright is they think about protection of ideas. You know, that little C thing that goes on the end of you know, a work. You know, with somebody's name next to it and a date, and it says that this idea is this person's and belongs to them, and you can't have it. And that's actually not at all what copyright is. Copyright doesn't. One of the biggest misconceptions is that copyright protects ideas, and it doesn't protect ideas. It protects instances of ideas. It protects original works, quoting directly from copyright.gov, which is an excellent resource, actually, particularly for a government website. It protects original works of authorship. It protects tangible instances, recorded instances of a concept of an idea. So you can have a thought, have an idea, never write it down, never do anything, and it's not protected. The minute that you write it down in the form of a script or a piece of artwork or a recording or a movie or anything that is recorded in a tangible medium, and that doesn't include digital, as of the Digital Protection Act or something like
Your
that.
YouTube video is protected.
Yeah. That tangible recording of that concept is protected, and no one else can use that instance of that concept without your consent, without your say. And copyright protects a couple of basic things. It protects. It allows only you, gives you and only you, the copyright holder, the right to reproduce the work, create derivative works based on that idea, and that, of course, in the word derivative, of course, is where we get into some of the fun gray areas in copyright as to whether or not what is exactly a derivative piece, and whether or not it's different enough from the original, and blah 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 blah. Distribute for sale, or any other kind of monetary exchange, and perform and display. And basically, it locks down that instance, that recording, as yours to do with as you see fit, and no one else can use it without your consent, except for a couple of rare, very specifically defined instances. Parody, although parody is slightly different. Parody, but yes, you can use works as for parody purposes, but more commonly for review, critique, or educational purposes. So if I was doing a review of a movie, I could take a clip of that film and post it online and be perfectly within my right to do so because I am reviewing the film, as opposed to reproducing the film or redistributing the film, which is not a right that I have as
It has to actually be a clip, is what you're
right.
trying to say.
Well, yes.
You can't
Putting the entire movie online and with a review is kind of a weird thing, and you're probably going to get a letter going, please take that down. Let's see.
You can't review the
right. Yes. You can't review the entirety. You can't release the entirety of the work as for review purposes. Parody is actually kind of interesting. This concept of I can use a work as a parody of the original work. And the interesting thing about that is that parody is unlike some of the other ones like review and educational purposes, which are not exactly rights or given things that you can do with it anyway. Parody is actually a legal defense. So the copyright holder you can do a parody of a work, and the copyright holder of that work can come up to you and go, hey, you're infringing on my property, stop it. And they are perfectly within their right. Actually, they're within the right to do that anytime they want as a copyright holder. But in instances of parody, you can argue legally that this is a work of parody, and they can either accept that or take you to court over it. And then that gets hashed out there. But parody is a defense as opposed to a right. For instance, how many of you guys are familiar with the webcomic Dominic Deegan? Okay, a couple of you guys. All right, anyway, so there's this webcomic, right, Dominic Deacon, and there's, yeah, I think you guys know what I'm talking about, right? So there's this one asshat on the internet, because it's only one guy, you realize, who has taken the various strips of this webcomic and removed all the text and put in all these horrific, inflammatory, just terrible, terrible dialogue to make all the characters seem like complete assholes and idiots and basically make fun of the author. And he calls it a work of parody. First off, it's not really a work of parody in that the artwork hasn't changed, and so he's taken the artwork verbatim. Even if he has changed out the text, he still has impinged on the copyright of that artwork. He's taken somebody else's art without their consent or permission and used it verbatim. And secondly, he can call it a parody, but that still doesn't stop the author from having the legal right to go, no, take this down, or you're going to get the next phone call will be from my lawyers. Because parody is a defense rather than a right. Other fun facts about copyright law. Let's see. Oh right, well that kind of, the Garfield minus Garfield, those kind of things. That also falls into the category of this nebulous category of parody, in that if pardon me, if Christ, who draws Garfield?
I was about to say, actually it doesn't anymore.
It doesn't?
No, because among other things, my understanding is the guy got a book published. I believe it was published through the same organization.
Oh, well, all right, then obviously...
Published Jim Davis. Then name you only first Jim Davis.
Oh, thank you, yeah. So obviously Davis or the publisher or whoever it is worked out, that this was an okay thing to do. And frequently in works of parody, the author or whoever it is that actually owns the copyright doesn't really make a big deal of that kind of thing. Things like that, because they're usually pretty
effective. It was interesting because there were other Garfield parody comics which were more changing the text,
right.
And that Jim Davis did send cease and desist, but Garfield minus Garfield was considered a specific case that they were given approval to do it.
Right. And I think it was because it brought something really new and novel to Garfield, and I
make more of a claim.
Right.
That also that art was being changed.
Yeah. There actually was a change to it.
Yeah.
If the guy was redrawing Dominic Deacon, then he might have.
Yeah, then he might have a defense there.
One way to understand the parody is it also has to, in some way, relate to the underlying work. For example, Garfield minus Garfield, it's taking Garfield, but it's actually making John look like, the owner look like he's a complete lunatic.
Well, yeah.
So it's a parody of the underlying work.
Right.
Whereas the Dominic Deacon guy was doing it solely to libel the publisher, and that was not technically a parody.
Right.
That's being a douchebag.
Which was. Oh my God.
We all remember that.
Yeah. And what's even worse is that that Mookie, the author of Dominic Deacon, is such a nice guy that he's never actually gone after this punk. And I keep telling him, Mookie, you really should tell him to stop. Legally, you should.
Wait, is he still actually making the?
I don't know if he's still doing it or not. Actually, he may have stopped at this point, which is thankfully, a good thing.
I think one of the ones that would fit your mold now, since Garfield minus Garfield, I think is off the table in terms of that, is Darths and Droids, which is done by the same gentleman who does Irregular Webcomic.
Oh, right.
And basically, he's using screenshots from Lucasfilm and improving the dialogue, in my opinion. And I don't know, I honestly do not know if he has an official okay from Lucasfilm or not. So
right.
He's certainly not trashing it, but at the same time, you never quite know.
Well, and that's one of those things that in many instances, for as far as Lucasfilms goes, let's assume that he hasn't, prior to starting this, gotten permission from Lucasfilms to use these clips to create the work. He could very easily be flying under Lucasfilm's radar.
Which is the case a lot of the time for a lot of reasons.
Right. If the minute though that he goes to try to publish a book of it, that could become an instance where Lucasfilms notices, says, hey, we'd rather you not do this, or something like that, which is of course their right being copyright.
And the commercial aspect, I mean,
That's,
Right.
also
Yeah,
a lot of
that's
times
always
the big
makes,
thing.
That is
makes
always
a big difference
Yeah.
to whether the original creator kind of ignores it.
Yeah.
it's a big
Even
thing.
if they aren't codifying it as like a Creative
Yeah,
Commons.
as long as
When
you're
you
talking
start,
about,
like, when you
as
start
long as you're talking about print material, you're not talking about music, yes.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
music is kind of they're kind of
Well,
special.
I gave a panel on internet radio this morning. Of course, everybody wasn't here yet, but that's all right. I recorded it because it's my property. I can do that.
Excellent.
But
There might be the
I basically put one slide in here that says, copyrighted material. This is problematic. You're probably going to owe a fee even if you're not making a profit. And that's all I'm saying on it because the RIAA scares me. That was the simplest way to put it because it's what I've discovered is the few times that I've actually tweaked something that somebody else has done for print, not that I'm very good at it. In a lot of cases, I'll either I will ask for permission.
Right.
I'll say, do you have an issue with this?
Yeah.
And
in the case
a
of
lot of
most
cases,
authors-
that actually, I think the problem is that some of these folks they get into trouble because they're just afraid of asking first.
Yeah.
And
The people would have been perfectly cool if they had.
Right.
yeah.
Most authors and creators like fan work. They like fan art. They like fan fiction. They like these things. They like other stuff that's been based on their works. It's kind of flattering in a weird way.
But once you get like major corporations like Lucas, like there's
Right.
like an individual saying like, can I do this, and going to like a large corporation like Lucasfilms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you are, say with a very large traditional like publishing house or
Mhm.
something,
Yeah.
you may have less leeway.
Right. Really
to
depends on
determine
your
yourself
agreements.
as to
Right.
whether or not you can say, okay, I'm okay with that, or just pretend like you don't see it,
Yeah.
or.
I'm happy to have stayed under the radar. Lots of companies these past 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So, by the way, if there are any other questions in the middle of any of this, please, feel free to ask.
What's the capital of Albania?
I don't really care.
Okay. that's a better answer
That's
I've
an
gotten
answer.
so far. So you want to go?
All right, excellent. So I've got a couple of fun comparisons of things that may or may not be copyright violations. There was a fantastic example that happened earlier in around March, I think it was this year.
around that.
This is when the big hubbub happened about it, in which I'm going to forget the guy's name. Yes, Nick Simmons published an American manga. I still don't know how I feel about that title. I feel it's kind of I think we call those comics, honestly. Yeah. But whatever. He published this American manga, and I haven't read it. Straight up. Have you guys looked? I don't know. Anyway. But apparently, a lot of people did read it, particularly a lot of fans of Bleach, and they found something interesting about the artwork. So in the black and white, we have artwork from Bleach. In the color, we have Nick Simmons' comic. You may notice something there, and so the fans cried havoc. And violation and things like that. And I believe it then went, and there's quite a few of these pages where there is some striking similarity. That's too zoomed in to really get it all, but some really striking similarity. And in all fairness, I think. Well, that one's actually still pretty close, but there's there's a couple of these that are just, in a lot of these, this is not obviously the same piece of art. He's not taken a panel verbatim. It's the same pose, roughly, the same action, but it's obviously been redrawn. These are just not the same pieces of art, but they're obviously been incredible. incredibly inspired by, influenced by
I
something.
believe he claimed it was inspired by
Yeah.
an homage.
Yeah, I think in a couple of these, I think people are just being silly. This one, yeah, seriously.
Big brush on a female character.
What is, I mean, like,
Copyright.
Yeah,
Copyright.
I want to copyright for that.
you're right,
If
seriously.
I could get a copyright on big kids, you'd be made for life.
Yeah.
Done.
Right. Now that would be an amazing one. God, that'd be awesome. But there's definitely been some serious influence here. But this does beg kind of the question of, well, is any of this, is this actually a copyright violation? And there's some legitimate debate about this. On the one hand, he has not copied directly. He has not taken somebody else's art verbatim, recopied it, claimed it as his own, and tried to pass it off as a new book. And as I understand it, Bleach and his comic have almost nothing in common as far as the storyline.
They probably both stop.
Oh well, that's fair. That's
But
fair.
unfortunately, copyright violation.
Right. Being bad is
Unfortunately,
free
lots
to
of
everyone.
stuff.
Everyone can be bad. So, but the question becomes, are they similar enough that you can mistake one for the other, that he's obviously trying to play off of the original art's success to bolster his own, what is it? And in my opinion, it's not a copyright violation. What it is just poor taste. It's one, every artist I know uses references at one point in time or another. They see something, they get inspired by it, they go, man, this angle is really difficult, it's not coming out well. Oh, it's supposed to look kind of like that, oh yeah, that helps a lot. And they flesh out their work that way using references. Everyone does it, and this is a totally okay thing to do. It's perfectly legal, nothing stopping you. But it's when you start getting so close as to almost be copying another piece that it's just it becomes an instance of poor taste, in my personal opinion.
Though, if you use the music analogy, which we just touched upon a little bit, how much different is it for, say, the Rolling Stones in their early career to cover, old
Right.
blues records and almost do it verbatim with just, a slight tinge in the intonation, but
Right.
they're basically playing the same stuff, but
Yeah. Apparently, Vanilla Ice claims that dun 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 is
Right.
totally different than dun 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 dun.
But of course, they probably got copyright clearance
Oh,
of the
yeah.
publisher before they
One
covered
thing
the
that,
song.
though, even if the Nick Simmons thing is legally gray, as a result of all the controversy, the publisher ended up pulling back and deciding not to publish the
Yeah, they
series.
basically strapped.
So the controversy on
Yeah.
its own was enough to get the book killed.
Right, because bad press is bad press. I don't
Yeah.
care whether it's
Well,
legitimately deserved or not.
Actually, I would argue that any press is good press. Actually, I think the rationale for not publishing it is not the bad press. It's the problem of if there's an implication of legal action.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
For a lot of people, they're just going to back off.
Right.
It's not even, there are a lot of lawyers who make a lot of money and they never go to court. All they do is send letters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because in a lot of cases, that's all that's necessary.
Well, and that's always the first step.
And I guess the question I would have is, and I will be happy to put on my I am not an artist hat. I'll show you stuff and go. I'm really not an
That's
artist.
okay, I believe it.
Let's say that this particular situation here, this particular slide even,
Yeah.
if it goes to court, who makes the decision? I realize that's kind of an open-ended question.
Yeah.
In this case, I guess it'd have to be the owner of Bleach and the people that published that book deciding themselves whether or not to go to court.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I asked this is when I used to work for a company that got into a long and protracted legal battle about the ownership of some software. We ended up it was taken to arbitration. Both sides had to demonstrate why the software was either copied and stolen, or it was original work. And then the arbitration panel decided that. This may be an extreme case for this, but I guess the problem is since we see so much stuff that has the potential of being accused of being derivative in some way. It's just that, I hate to say it, I think this is going to get a lot worse.
Well, probably. And that is, of course, you know, one of the major cruxes in the huge, you know, copyright debate that's currently going on throughout almost every industry. You know, it's not just in radio and the music industry. It's like movies, and it's not just in like them. Like comics is also having their big blow up with Mark Waid and I'm going to forget the other guy's name. He drew from that.
Oh, Sergio Arroyo.
Yeah. You know, who, as I understand it, was not actually, it was not as big a blow up as, you know, the internet press has made it out to be. But,
You mean something on the internet is wrong?
yeah, I know. Amazing, right? And you know, in most instances, as I understand it, most copyright, particularly in the realm of art and comics, most copyright questions, things, don't get past really the cease and desist letter, and beyond that, mostly get settled out of court. I don't think there's a lot of
like the software.
yeah, it's in software and
But
you
not
know,
really
radio
feedback to
and you know, the MI, you know, the RIAA, who likes to make a big deal about everything.
Like with technology law, like the motion sensor blowout,
Right.
when it's like copying, like whether or not.
Well, that also falls into patents more than anything else, which is an entirely different ballgame than copyright.
And a lot of times, frankly, it's not, the property itself is not
Right.
worth enough money. Individual property is not worth enough money for the company
To go to
court.
the
Unless
hassle,
you're like
yeah.
Harry Potter,
Or
right,
Disney,
Harry Potter,
right,
you know,
yeah.
your publisher's probably not making enough to like care. You
Right,
know,
right.
to take it all away.
We had a question
Oh,
over
I was just saying about, I mean, if this were to go to trial, the jury would have to define a fact to determine whether or not, whether or not this is a violation. The thing is, the judge would actually give the rule of saying, how similar do they have to be. But beyond that, the publisher's always going to have better lawyers. I mean, the publisher from the more established companies are always going to have better lawyers, backing him.
Right, which is one of the reasons no one really wants to get into a legal battle, because then it's saying who can hire the biggest lawyer, right? No one wants to get into that, so this is why most people settle out of court. Or the minute that anyone like says that, when that cease and desist letter comes in, most people go, it's not worth my time, effort, money, hassle to make this happen. I'm going to go do something else now. Yes.
Finish up with a different scenario. Somebody publishes a work, let's say 20, 30 years ago, and I realize the amount of time is significant. For whatever reason, I want to republish the work. Copyright holder can't be found.
Right. So. Thank you for bringing Orphan Works up. Orphan Works is a kind of an awesome thing, mostly because it also suffered from the internet misinformation machine.
That's why I wanted to ask you.
That's what
a couple. Yeah. For those of you not familiar with the idea, orphaned work is a copyrighted material, whether it be a book, a picture, a record, whatever it is, a copyrighted work for which the copyright owner cannot be found. No one knows who it belongs to, so it becomes considered an orphaned work and is generally then considered in public domain, and you can do whatever you want with it. Now, it was what, like a year or two ago that some guy, I don't even remember what his name was, got a hold of like some information that the current law on orphaned works was up for some review in a congressional hearing somewhere or other, some sub.
Wasn't wasn't the Patent and Trademark Office?
It might have been. I don't know.
Like that.
Somewhere or other, the legal of it was that's orphan work specifically was up for some reevaluation.
I think because
something.
it's for digital media,
Right,
that's
right.
what sort of they should reevaluate.
And this guy went and blogged his little head off about how Congress was going to take away all of our copyrights, and how to be protected at all you would have to go and get registered with these big corporations that didn't even exist yet, and oh woe is us, and how you need to send your congressman, letters and spam about, how this is a terrible thing and you're not going to tolerate it and blah, blah, blah. And he was entirely wrong, like 100%. He was right that the Orphan Work Act was up for some review in some subcommittee somewhere or other. But the way that it, and I don't think they've even gotten around to changing it yet, if they were going to change it. And basically what it is that the way the law is written and is currently written, and I think even the way they were expecting to rewrite it, places all of the effort and on getting an orphaned work declared orphan on the person who wants to use it. They have to go through.
I don't have a problem with that.
Right, they have to go through a very extensive documented search to try and find the copyright owner. And if afterwards the copyright owner surfaces and goes, hey, I'm the copyright owner for that, it's not an orphan work anymore.
Yeah.
So don't worry about losing your copyright.
Yeah, people on DeviantArt were making it basically sound like, oh, if I don't have my watermark on this image, then it can be taken by anybody. And it's like,
now, granted, you should always sign and date everything you do. Just do it as a force of habit. I mean, really, guys, there's really no reason not to. Put it there. That signature is, kind of important. But you don't have to register anything to be protected. In fact, copyright is automatically given upon creation. All you have to do is write it down, and it's copyrighted automatically.
Now, if you are working with a traditional or even like a small, like a lot of my prose works are out through small presses, so you are highly encouraged to go ahead and get the legal piece of paper because that gives you some extra in court.
Right.
If it does go to court, which chances are slim, but you have that. But it is definitely not.
You don't have to register with the copyright office.
You're covering your ass if you do it.
And even registering with the copyright office is really easy. There's like a really, it's not a very big. There's a fee associated with it. It's like $40.
Something like that is one of the big differences between like a copyright and trademark.
Yes, trademarks have a lot of money and a lot of paperwork involved with them, and are very, very big, very different ball of wax than a copyright. And as you were saying, when you register, you get a couple of extra protections. If you have register your copyright and that your work then is used without permission, you can seek damages. Which, if you don't register it, you can tell them to stop, but you can't seek a monetary reimbursement for sales lost or what have you.
Have you guys trademarked your own logos or your properties?
Actually, I haven't. I've been meaning to do that. And that's something that there are companies out there that specify in logo trademarking and streamlining that process and other things like that.
It's a few $100 anyway. You cut it out.
Yeah. And in general, for instance, I should get my logos trademarked, but
where can I find them?
Yeah, online.
Well, that's the problem is that you could seriously have somebody squat on your stuff, I would assume.
Oh, you could, absolutely.
That's my plan.
Sure, right.
Anyway, you sold that idea. I'm going to write it down.
People have actually stolen my Sprite comic work before.
Really? That's kind of sad.
Oh, dude.
They couldn't even make their own Sprite comics. They had to steal mine.
Really?
Oh,
Wow. That is like all-time low.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. That is really all-time low.
wow.
Wow. Anyway. Pardon me. So yes, yes, you could have someone go out there literally copying everything that I do, copying my site entirely and replacing their name with mine on it, and I would potentially never even know. But you know what? They can't put out pages faster than I can because they're copying all my pages. Yes, they shouldn't do it, and absolutely, if I were to find someone doing that, I would absolutely tell them, hey, cut this out. This is some highly illegal shit you got going here. But until it literally affects my business, that I notice that I'm being mistaken for somebody else. You know, people come up to, I mean, I get people who come up to my table at cons all the time and go, man, your stuff looks really familiar. I'm like, we've probably seen it online, because I have a heavy online presence, and I do a lot of conventions. They probably have literally seen my stuff before. It's when they start going, oh yeah, you're that Steve Napierski guy. I'm like, I need to go have a talk with Steve now.
I would have to talk to music league too.
Well, talk with him, but like, you know, from
Yeah,
many feet away.
There you go.
Right. And so, yeah. No.
I was going to say, I had an experience, not that exact thing, but with one of my novels, I serialized it online, and I released the ebook under Creative Commons, and it says in the front, you are allowed to distribute this to anyone you want to, as long as you don't change the attribution, as long as you don't charge anything for it. I found some douchebag who put it up on the Kindle store on Amazon, and was selling it, and like, so I had Amazon take it down, and they actually were extremely helpful, and they did it without any issue.
That's awesome.
But it was like, you know, what a dick, you know. And I mean, he didn't change it anyway, but he was still like, oh, I'm going to sell this.
I get a lot of emails like, hey, I do such and such with your work, I like redraw part of it. And I always say like, yeah, I'm totally fine with that, so long as you never see if you make any monetary gain from it.
Yeah.
Right, and that is, of course, one of the really neat things about the Creative Commons license, is that Creative Commons sets up a really straightforward and very well-defined method of granting specific copyright rights to other people. It's really no different than, I mean, you can do everything that with the Creative Commons that you can with you can do everything that Creative Commons does with a normal copyright, absolutely. But then you have to like spell out that, you know, you are free to do yada 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 yada, blah 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 blah. Whereas if you go Creative Commons non-distributive license, you put that little thing right down there on your site, it automatically tells people without having you to explain further what rights you're granting them automatically. And that's actually it's kind of a cool thing, particularly for a lot of online works, because a lot of us webcomics anyway have kind of realized, you know what, we want you to distribute it to people. We want you to show this to other folks. We just don't want you to make money on it.
But you know, relating to that story, I've been told by I'm a musician, so other musicians have told me that even if you're going to give your album away for free, for download or anything, you should still post it on iTunes or something for pay.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you don't, some jackass might hijack it and claim it as their own and try and collect it. So if you've already got it on there, that copyright's at least musically. I know more about the music copyright than I do for.
Well, it's pretty easier. It doesn't copyright it, but that might give you a better legal defense. But then again, there's also this old wives' tale about with authors. Oh, if you mail yourself a copy, that's completely not true at all. Yeah. So that may not.
Well, this may be kind of a no-brainer if somebody does like email you like about a specific thing and you make a deal in regards to it. Just keep all those emails, like save them somewhere, just in case they go back on that. Yeah. It's like kind of just a conversation.
Do things in writing, by the way.
Yeah.
Don't do verbal agreements with anyone.
No.
Don't say, oh yeah, it's cool, guy.
No.
Don't ever say that. Don't ever do that. Get it written down. I don't care how trivial it sounds, or anything.
For some stuff, much better to sign a physical contract than exchange electronics.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, you know, paper with the proper ink is still more indelible than anything else.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I love that poor man's copyright thing.
Yeah, that just has legs. It keeps going.
It keeps going. One day it'll be legit. Maybe, I don't know. That'd be amazing.
Then it would be spoiled.
Oh, sorry. Let me explain. All right, so the poor man's copyright is this concept that if you take whatever it is that you want to copyright, you put it in an envelope and you mail it to yourself. It has then,
you don't
open it, right? You don't open it. It has then been dated and gone through a federal branch somewhere and been recognized by the federal government, and so you've got like this indelible timestamp on when it was created and yada yada. And it's like, you can do this. There's nothing wrong with doing this. It doesn't help you at all. Like, it's not admissible in court. It doesn't grant you any more protection than simply putting your name on it.
Better off
and USPS isn't a federal agency anymore, technically.
Right, right.
Plus stamps are just so expensive.
Yeah, no, save yourself the postage. I mean, really. Email it to yourself or something.
But make sure not to open the email.
Right, but don't open an email.
You can always mark us on the
Like, I'm not thinking some guy, like, he pictures himself like today's newspaper and
Now, if you are getting someone to commit a crime for you, though, do take a picture of yourself with a newspaper. That is good.
Let's see. Other fun things about copyrights.
You may have any questions?
We have any
Public
questions?
domain, copyright.
Questions
Yeah.
about
Creative Commons.
Anything you? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess even though you guys might know, no one appears a lawyer, but you guys seem very knowledgeable. I'm saying, what, as far as resources, is there like a certain resource that's maybe the most helpful, that's simplified for, like, you know, copyright law? Because I know for musicians, there's tons of stuff on musical copyrights.
Right.
I know there's the same thing for comic arts, more specifically webcomics. I know it's still relatively such a
Yeah, I don't know of anything that specific.
Yeah,
I
not
will-
that specific. I'd
yeah.
maybe just like look for like your general comics or novel copyright laws, and then digital media, which
Copyright.gov.
good luck
Yeah.
figuring that out.
Copyright.gov
Yeah.
is like your go-to source for almost everything copyright.
And
It
covers
is.
a lot of
It
different-
does, and it's actually amazingly clear and concise
It
about
is.
a lot of stuff, which is amazing.
Library of Congress.
Yeah, so don't be afraid
There
to
you
use
go.
it as a government, it's not that hard to
Especially a
understand.
federal agency.
And
Yeah,
that
yeah,
way
yeah.
you were getting the right
Congressional
information.
agency, which is different.
Go figure.
Oh, don't get me started on the dark side of that.
Yeah, and there are some differences in copyrights. Like I know that music copyrights actually have their own specific separate
Yeah.
branch of copyright
Yeah,
laws
yeah.
specific to them, which is different from published written works and artwork in general. But really, like, I don't worry a lot about people stealing my stuff, you know, stealing my work and claiming it as theirs. Like, I've never had this happen to me. I've known a couple of people that have had it happen to them, but like, it's still been very, very rare. I mean, the more likely scenario is stuff like this, where someone sees your work, really likes it, is very enthusiastic, big fan, and then they go do something that is so very, very, very like your work that it's kind of questionable as to how original it really is.
I'm more worried about Square Enix finding out about me than I am about
You
anyone else
should.
using my stuff.
You should worry about that.
My defense is if 8-bit could sell it for like however long they did, I'll be for just fine.
That's probably true.
So at least on copyright laws also apply to like artwork that's created like on campus. Also.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. You know, any medium, like
Yeah.
any recorded medium makes it is copyrightable. An oil painting is automatically copyrighted when it's painted. A digital comic is automatically copyrighted when it's drawn. A piece of music is automatically copyrighted when the score is written down or when it's first recorded. As long as it's recorded in some kind of medium, whatever that medium is, it's copyrighted, basically. Yeah, it's automatically granted. Yes.
You and I have the other cool examples of copyright and how they can affect comics, like you did the Dominic Deegan thing, the Garfield minus Garfield. I saw
There was an issue like in the
thing.
1990s.
Oh, yeah.
Rob Liefeld tried to create a character, I believe it was called the Fighting American, after Marvel, like, I guess, after he left Marvel. And the character was just such an obvious rip-off of Captain America that they had to go through that. And I guess Liefeld was big enough, and Image was big enough, that they didn't have to immediately cease and desist. They ended up going out of court and working out a series of things. So they were able to publish a few issues of Fighting American, which I don't believe anyone bought anyway. But they had to work out like a certain like stringent like set of things like this character could and could not do. Like they actually legally got it to say that the character Fighting American is not allowed to throw a shield.
Yes.
Actually, on that, I don't know if this is exactly what I don't know how this resolved, but I remember when City of Heroes came out, that MMO, there was a lot of problems with that, and that a lot of the characters could be too similar to like Marvel and DC characters.
Right.
So I'm not sure that one resolved or not.
I don't know how that worked out either. I kind of feel like eventually Marvel and DC just had to suck it up and realize it wasn't worth it, because all of that is also it is user generated. You know, it's not the company that's doing it, and there's no profit made, and it's none that I know of legally, because I don't think you're allowed to like sell your characters for money.
Not
I think they
That's-
sell.
Most MMOs ban it, doesn't mean there isn't a trade.
that. Yeah, I mean,
Alright,
like, it
that's
happens, but it's not something that the company itself can like
So,
control.
that's an individual thing.
Don't you,
I personally cannot wait to create Spider-Man in DC Universe Online.
yeah.
Isn't that kind of the point though? It's DCU. Wouldn't like
I think it's a great plan. But I guess the question we have, and this sort of falls in the MMO problem, but also other works, which is, okay, I'm not an artist. Let me get that tattooed on my head. I think it's simple. I have to sign, when I go to work for a company, I have to sign away certain rights.
Right.
When I buy software and I participate in an MMO, there is usually a god-awful user agreement I have to go through.
Which you should always read in its entirety.
Well, I try to.
It's true, you should.
Apparently, every time I upgrade iTunes, the letter has gotten, I've been told it's 45 pages on an iPhone now.
It's amazing.
I guess the question is it common practice, or is it good practice for an artist to, even if they're going to work for a company that has nothing to do with what their art is, to make a stink up front as to ownership of their work? Or is it, or
Always read your contracts.
Well, yeah.
Like read them, make sure you understand them, make sure they are incredibly clear.
If
If
you
you
haven't
don't
found it,
understand
have it
them,
clarified.
show them to a lawyer, get them clarified, you know, get that worked out. Because in a lot of instances where, particularly for creative individuals working for companies, they will have you sign an agreement that says that while you are employed with us, your work belongs to us. You know, it's just that pay for hire thing. Some of them go so far as not only the work you create while on the clock, but anything you make during the time you are employed with us. Anything. So at home, your doodles, your napkin sketches, everything belongs to them.
I don't know.
And if that's a problem, don't work for them.
This is actually the line of an episode back off Ted. I don't know if you guys saw that show. But one of the characters was writing a children's novel and had to kind of sneak around because her contract stipulated that anything she created, no matter what, was owned by the company.
Yeah, I mean, even like corporations that don't do anything artistic, like Qualcomm, like Northrop Grumman, like they own all of their employees' work, even if it's so not related to the actual scope of the job.
Because I mean, it is literally in the company's interest to do so.
Yeah.
And I mean, I take great exception to this as a creative individual. It's like the stuff that I do for you, yours, totally, free and clear, whatever. I mean, that's why you're paying me. But what I do on my own time, that's my stuff. And I personally would not sign a contract that said otherwise.
No, absolutely be wary of that.
Yeah.
So check this out, though. Disney versus Jack Kirby going on right now. Even it's his estate. Obviously, he's gone, but his family's not. When Kirby worked for Marvel, he was a freelancer.
Right.
And he didn't sign any contracts that said the works that I do explicitly belong to you, Marvel Comics. Now, Marvel Comics did have an agreement like that, but because they hired him on as a freelancer, and he never wound up signing anything, this is the basis. Now he, I guess when he was alive, he wasn't the type of guy who was really going to
Make a big
make a legal
He was kind of a
statement.
curmudgeon, and like if they were leaving him alone, he would leave them alone.
Right. But when they gave him that contract, and there was a big fight over his original art, because he was just trying to recoup his original art so he could sell that and get basically money to take care of his kids as his estate when he was gone.
Sure.
And Marvel started putting all these stipulations on it that they didn't put on anybody else, and they said, you got to sign this thing that says we own everything you ever did.
Right.
And he wouldn't do it.
Right.
So he went to his grave not resolving that issue, and his family decided when he left to raise it as it. So right now, Jack Kirby's estate is suing Disney for basically their portion of everything they did with the Hulk, with Fantastic Four, the X-Men, Thor, and it's still going on.
Oh
So,
yeah, no, that's a legal battle. I don't think I mean, certain things, obviously, copyrights are become huge things like this because there are millions and millions and millions of dollars at stake.
A big thing with
Well, I mentioned the D word. Now I'm a great fan of the D word, but boy, when they get involved in ownership of properties, it's
They're
like,
very
I think they'll win. I think they'll win,
The
but
comics itself isn't even the necessary art. It's the ownership of characters as the original art.
which it falls into trademarks
Like
rather than.
One example is
see,
like
when
Seagull
Schuster
Sister.
signed away Superman.
Well, the issue wasn't
What?
necessarily Superman. It was a while ago with Superboy. So DC Comics has like a bunch of characters like called Superboy, and for a time none of them were allowed to be used. And then eventually the court decided that DC does not have ownership of Superboy, the young Superman, but they do have ownership of Superboy, the clone of Superman and Lex Luthor.
Right.
So
Yeah, and that falls into the interesting tidbit of trademarks versus copyright.
I don't know why it's doing that, but I'll make it stop.
Because trademarks, unlike copyrights, which protects instances, as we kind of went over earlier, trademarks are more protective of ideas and are more clearly defined. It's how you get likenesses licensed. It's how you get Batman lunchboxes and thermoses and whatnot. The artwork that goes on there is onto the Batman lunchbox is copyrighted, but really what's being sold there is the likeness of Batman, which is a trademark thing.
That's something we as webcomics encounter very often, just because we own our own work.
Yeah.
All of like DC and Marvel, the company owns your work.
Right, and bigger things tend to get made, of course, when there are large companies involved who have large established franchises based on something, whereas creators are.
So like the title of a book is not copyrightable,
Right.
but Harry Potter and the blank has been trademarked.
Oh yes.
But
So,
catch up on my new
yeah.
book, Larry Totter and the Sorcerer's Shoe,
Yeah.
out this fall.
Yes, I mean, there's all these, if you go into the teen section, every single thing is Percy Jackson and the, whatever, the Lightning Thief, or
Right,
so-and-so and the,
Yeah.
because the Harry Potter thing is trademarked, but the, first name, last name, and the whatever is
Right.
not.
Well, they
My
can't.
second
well,
book,
they can't
my
do
second
that.
book coming out next winter, first name, last name, and the blank.
You're a jerk. I was going to say that right now, just to be clear. Okay, and we're just about at the end of this, though I don't know who's coming in next, so we might be able to go over a little bit if people still have, so if you guys have questions, please ask now, or I think, unless there's anything else we need to cover, I think that's everything. Yes?
So I came in late, I don't know if you covered this, but how do these copyright things apply to fan art?
I'm so glad that you brought up fan art. Fan art's a fun thing, because the artwork is copyrighted to the artist. Like I can go draw Batman. The drawing that I do, mine. I own the copyright on that drawing. Batman, obviously not mine, belongs to DC Comics. And that becomes, of course, where some of the interesting things, the debates go, because Batman, the trademark, is owned by DC Comics, and I have used that character without permission. And that's effectively what fan art does, is it creates art without asking, well, except for sometimes where people do actually go, hey, I want to draw things of your characters, can I? Most creators love fan art. It's awesome. It's very flattering to see that somebody likes our creations enough to go and draw them, write about them, stuff like that. It's very flattering. But it does become an interesting question of, well, the characters obviously belong to the original creator, even if they haven't gone and trademarked them and licensed them and blah, 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 blah. They created them. The general concept is that they are now owned by those creators, even if legally that may not actually be the case. I'm a little fuzzier on that.
It's a real gray.
Yeah.
I can't really think of any main Sure.
I think that could become like there could be some serious legal battles about that, and to be decided in court by lawyers, which is always the worst way to decide anything. But the artwork is copyrighted to the artist, whoever draws it, even if the content characters are an intellectual property of some form belonging to somebody else.
So DC still couldn't be like, oh wow, it's a great Batman. I think
Yeah,
we're just
they can't take your artwork
you
and
can-
use it because you own that artwork.
Yeah.
But by owning Batman, they can tell you, hey, you can't sell this because without a license because this is our property. But they can't stop you from drawing Batman.
Once money gets involved.
Yeah, usually it's when the money gets involved that people start getting very persnickety about it.
Which is something like I'm very careful about. Like with my comic, like while I sell merchandise, I make sure that none of the merchandise I sell features copyright or trademark items.
Right.
Something like that similar happened with Todd McFarlane when he was drawing Spider-Man like a movie comic or something.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't. I don't know. I don't think I
And
heard
this
that.
man had so many.
Yeah, that was a big
That's
like
true.
that initial split
Blurry.
one image.
Yeah.
But like an example was when Pete Abrams doing Sluggy Freelance many years ago did a story arc called Fire and Rain, I believe is what it was called, and he was using lyrics, as he was posting it from Victoria Amos song, I believe, and not just a couple, he used like quite a few, and so then before it was put out in a form, he was back in digital, so he was selling it, it's not in there.
Right. Okay, and I think we're done here. So, what's up next?